Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The December wind cut through Eugene's suburban streets as Andrew Ramsey adjusted his collar for the third time. The photographer, a nervous woman with too much equipment, kept repositioning the tripod while his family waited on the front porch steps. She'd been fussing with the camera settings for 20 minutes, muttering about lighting and angles. "Dad, you're blocking my good side," Brielle said, not looking up from her phone. Her fingers moved across the screen with practiced speed, probably updating her followers about this boring family obligation. She wore the designer jacket he'd bought her for her birthday, the one that cost more than most people made in a week. Valerie stood beside him, her smile plastic and wide. "Andrew, straighten your shoulders. We need this to look perfect for the Christmas cards." She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, applying makeup with the precision of a surgeon. Her dress was new, purchased specifically for this photo session that she'd scheduled without consulting him. "Mrs. Ramsey, maybe if your husband could step back just a bit," the photographer suggested, her voice apologetic. "He's fine where he is," Andrew said quietly. He'd built this porch with his own hands, had installed every board and painted every rail. If anyone belonged here, it was him. He shifted slightly, his military posture already rigid. The house behind them gleamed in the afternoon light, every board he'd cut and nailed himself, every window frame he'd installed during weekends when other fathers watched football. The wraparound porch where Brielle had taken her first steps, where she'd once sat with him on summer evenings listening to him read stories. The oak tree he'd planted when they moved in 15 years ago now towered over the roof, its bare branches reaching toward the gray December sky. He remembered the day they'd moved in. Brielle was 2, still calling him Daddy with genuine affection. Valerie had been different, then too excited about their future, grateful for the home he'd built with his own hands. She'd kissed him in the empty living room and said, "We're going to be so happy here." 15 years. Where had it all gone wrong? "Perfect," the photographer called out. "Now everyone say." Andrew's phone buzzed. A text from Brielle, sitting 2 feet away from him. "You're such a loser. Mom should have left you years ago." That he read it twice. The words sat there on his screen, clear and deliberate. No autocorrect mistake. No misunderstanding. Each letter had been typed with intention. He looked at his daughter, 17 years old, wearing clothes he'd paid for, living in a house he'd built, preparing for a college education he was funding. This was what she thought of him. Valerie glanced at his phone and burst into laughter. "Oh my God, Brielle, you actually sent that." Her voice carried across the quiet neighborhood, probably reaching the neighbors who were raking leaves in their yards. She high-fived their daughter right there on the porch steps, both of them giggling like conspirators sharing a private joke at his expense. The photographer lowered her camera, sensing the shift in mood. "She's right, Valerie said, her voice carrying the same tone she used when discussing student disciplinary issues at work. "Clinical, detached, final. I settled for less." The words hung in the cold air. Andrew had heard variations of the sentiment for years, but never stated so plainly, never in front of a stranger with a camera, never with such casual cruelty. The photographer's camera clicked once, capturing the moment. Andrew looked at the device in her hands, then at his wife and daughter, still smirking at their shared joke. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. The metal fell cold against his palm. House key, truck key, shop key. 15 years of responsibility reduced to 3 pieces of brass. "Keep it," he said, holding them out to Valerie. "I'm done." "What?" Valerie's smile faltered. Andrew placed the keys on the porch railing. The photographer lowered her camera, sensing something was wrong. "I'm done," he repeated, then turned and walked down the steps. "Where are you going?" Brielle called out, her voice higher now, uncertain. He didn't answer. His boots crunched on the gravel driveway as he headed toward his truck. Behind him, Valerie was saying something about Christmas cards and making a scene, but her words sounded like background noise. The truck door slammed shut with a solid thunk. In the rearview mirror, he could see them still standing on the porch, his wife holding his keys, his daughter with her phone half raised like she might document this too. He drove away without looking back, The memories came in waves as Andrew sat in his truck outside Darren's auto shop. First, the summer he'd spent building their house from foundation to roof. Valerie had complained about the noise, the sawdust, the way it was taking too long. She'd wanted to hire contractors, said his pride was costing them money. "You're being stubborn," she'd said one evening, standing in what would become their kitchen. Normal husbands hire professionals. She'd been holding Brielle, then 2 years old, who was fussing because her dinner was late. "Normal husbands can't afford to build custom homes," he'd replied, not looking up from the cabinet frame he was assembling. "This way, she'll inherit something real. She'll inherit debt if you keep this up." But he kept working, every nail driven straight, every joint perfect. He'd wanted to build something that would last, something that would still be standing when Brielle had children of her own. The house had taken 8 months to complete, working evenings and weekends. When it was finished, even Valerie had to admit it was beautiful. Then there was Brielle's soccer season when she was 12. He'd coach her team because no other parent would volunteer. Spent Saturdays in muddy fields teaching kids how to pass, how to work together, how to support each other even when they were losing. Valerie had missed every game, claiming school events were more important. "You're wasting your time," she'd said when he came home with grass stains on his jeans. She's not going to get a scholarship from recreational soccer. It's not about scholarships. It's about teaching her to be part of something bigger than herself. "Nice job today, coach," one of the other fathers had said after their final game. "My daughter's never been more confident." The man had shaken Andrew's hand with genuine warmth. "You've got a gift for this." Brielle had hugged him then, grass stains on her uniform, trophy in her small hands. "Thanks, Dad. You're the best." She'd meant it then. He could see it in her eyes, feel it in the way she clung to him. When had that changed? When had he become someone worth mocking? When had his contributions become invisible? The answer, he realized, had been gradual, a slow erosion over years. Valerie's small comments about his work, his appearance, his choices. Brielle learning to see him through her mother's eyes as someone to be tolerated rather than respected. His phone buzzed. "Darren, shop's closed. You coming in, or you planning to sit in my parking lot all night?" Andrew climbed out of the truck. Darren stood in the doorway of his garage, wiping grease off his hands with a red shop rag. They'd served together in Iraq before Andrew's brother died, and everything changed. Darren was one of the few people who remembered who Andrew had been before marriage had slowly ground him down. "Rough day?" Darren asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "I left her." Darren nodded slowly. He'd been watching Andrew's marriage crumble for years, had seen the way Valerie dismissed his friend's contributions, the way Brielle had learned to view her father as an embarrassment. He'd bitten his tongue through countless gatherings where the women in Andrew's life treated him like hired help. "About time," Darren said. "What was the final straw?" Andrew pulled out his phone and showed him the text message. Darren read it, his jaw tightening. "Jesus, Andrew. From your own kid." Valerie high-fived her for it, right there in front of the photographer. Darren shook his head. "You know what this is? This is them telling you exactly who they are. Finally being honest instead of hiding behind fake smiles and family photos. Maybe about it. They've been showing you disrespect for years. Today they just stopped pretending it was anything else." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two veterans who'd learned to read between the lines of what people said versus what they meant. "You got a place to stay?" Darren asked. "Not yet. There's a cabin about 30 miles out. Guy owes me a favor. It's furnished, quiet. Good place to think." They drove out together in Darren's pickup, following winding roads through Douglas fir forests. The cabin sat on 10 acres, surrounded by timber and silence. One bedroom, a small kitchen, a fireplace that actually worked. "You always tried harder than anyone," Darren said as they unloaded Andrew's hastily packed bags. And they just saw a wallet with a pulse. Andrew set his duffel bag on the bed and looked around the simple room. No family photos. No Christmas decorations. No reminders of 15 years spent building something that turned out to be hollow. "Maybe that's all I was good for," he said. "Bull." Darren's voice carried the same edge it had in the Army when he called out stupidity. "You raised that girl when her mother was too busy playing victim. You built a business from nothing. You took care of your brother's kid for 3 years after he died. Lenny. Andrew hadn't thought about his niece in weeks. She was in law school now, top her class. He'd paid for everything after his brother's funeral, had helped her with homework and college applications while Valerie complained about the extra expense. Your family didn't deserve you, Darren continued. Now you get to find out who you are without them dragging you down. Valerie's phone rang at 7 in the morning. She'd spent the night calling Andrew's number, getting voicemail every time. The automated message was still the same, his voice calm and professional, asking callers to leave a message for Ramsey Custom Woodworking. As if nothing had changed. As if he hadn't abandoned his family over a stupid joke. Brielle had tried too, her earlier confidence replaced by something that looked like panic. She'd paced the house all night, checking social media obsessively, trying to figure out if anyone had posted about the scene at the photo shoot. Mr. Ramsey's legal representation, a woman's voice said when Valerie answered the call. Professional. Cold. The kind of voice that delivered bad news for a living. Legal representation? This is his wife. Where is he? Ms. Ramsey, my name is Marlo Dritten. I'm calling to inform you that divorce proceedings will be filed this morning on grounds of emotional cruelty. Valerie laughed. She actually laughed. The sound echoed through the kitchen where she stood in her bathrobe, coffee growing cold in her favorite mug, the one Andrew had given her for their 5th anniversary. He's filing for divorce? He walked out on us. I should be the one. Ma'am, I need to inform you of several important facts. First, you have 30 days to vacate the residence. Second, the house is owned solely by my client as per the postnuptial agreement you signed 5 years ago. The laughter died in Valerie's throat. Her hand tightened on the phone. What postnuptial agreement? The document you signed following your extramarital affair with Mr. Wesley Cordero in 2020. My client was generous enough not to pursue divorce at that time, provided you agreed to relinquish all claims to marital property. The phone nearly slipped from Valerie's hand. She remembered that paper Andrew had asked her to sign. She'd been so grateful he wasn't leaving her, so desperate to save face in their community, that she'd barely read it. He'd presented it calmly, almost sadly, saying it was just to protect his business assets. You signed this to show you're committed to rebuilding trust, he'd said then. It's just paperwork. But it hadn't been just paperwork. It had been a trap, waiting 5 years to spring. Additionally, Marlo continued, financial support for your daughter will cease on her 18th birthday in 6 weeks. My client has been generous enough to provide notice. You can't do this. We have rights. Ma'am, your rights were clearly defined in the agreement you signed. If you have questions, I suggest you contact your own attorney. Have a good day. The line went dead. Valerie stared at her phone, then at Brielle, who was watching from the kitchen doorway. What's wrong? Brielle asked. Get dressed. We need to find your father. But Andrew's phone went straight to voicemail. His shop was closed, a sign on the door saying he was taking time off. They drove to Darren's garage, but it was locked up tight. Valerie tried calling 86 times that day. He didn't answer once. The eviction notice arrived on official letterhead, delivered by a process server who apologized as he handed Valerie the documents. 30 days to vacate. The paper felt heavy in her hands, weighted with the reality of her situation. Brielle paced the living room, her phone pressed to her ear, trying to salvage what remained of her online empire. No, Mom's not available for the partnership meeting. Brielle was saying to someone on the other end, her voice strained. Can I have him call you back? She ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Hi, this is Brielle Ramsey. I got your message about the cosmetics campaign. Andrew's absence filled the house like a physical presence. No coffee brewing at 5:30 in the morning. No sound of his truck in the driveway after work. No quiet humming from the garage workshop where he'd spent countless hours creating furniture that would outlast them all. Valerie found herself walking through rooms she'd decorated without his input, seeing them differently now. The expensive sofa she'd insisted on buying, despite his suggestion that they save money. The artwork she'd chosen because it looked sophisticated, not because either of them actually liked it. The dining room table he'd built by hand, which she'd covered with a tablecloth because she thought the natural would look too rustic. Another brand deal falling through. 3 sponsors had dropped Brielle in the past week, citing brand alignment issues. Someone had screenshot her cruel text to Andrew and posted it everywhere. The comments were brutal. Spoiled brat. Imagine treating your dad like that, and no wonder he left. This girl is everything wrong with Gen Z. Daddy was paying for everything, and she treated him like garbage. The hashtag Betrayal Ramsey was trending, but not in the way she'd always dreamed. Her follower count was dropping by thousands each day. Comments on her old posts were vicious, with people going back months to criticize things that had seemed harmless before. "Mom, what do I do?" Betrayal asked, finally putting down her phone. For the first time in years, she looked like the scared teenager she actually was instead of the confident influencer she pretended to be online. Valerie stared at the eviction notice. "I don't know, baby. I honestly don't know." Valerie's own phone buzzed. Her supervisor at the school. "Valerie, we need to talk." "My office. Now." The drive to the school felt longer than usual. Parents were dropping off their kids, normal families doing normal things. Valerie had built her reputation on being the counselor who understood troubled teens, who could connect with difficult families. Now, she felt like a fraud. Principal Martinez was waiting with the district supervisor and someone from HR. "Sit down, Valerie," Martinez said. "We've received some concerning information." They had copies of her social media posts, screenshots of her public mockery of Andrew. Someone had also reported discrepancies in her employment records, specifically her marital status and household income for benefits purposes. "I don't understand what you're implying," Valerie said, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. "We're implying that you may have been fraudulently claiming single-parent benefits while married," the HR representative said. "That's a serious allegation. We're also aware of your relationship with Wesley Cordero," Martinez added. "Dating a co-worker violates our ethics policy, especially when you're both in positions of authority with students." Valerie's mouth went dry. We're not. Ms. Ramsey, we're placing you on unpaid leave pending a full investigation. You'll need to surrender your badge and keys." Walking out of the school with her personal items in a cardboard box, Valerie felt the stares of colleagues she'd worked with for 8 years. The whispers started before she reached her CART home. Betrayal was crying in her room. Her follower count had dropped by 60%. College admissions counselors were asking questions about her online behavior. The viral video of her and her mother high-fiving over the cruel text had been shared thousands of times. "This is all Dad's fault," Betrayal sobbed. "If he hadn't been so dramatic." "No," Valerie said quietly. "This is our fault." But even as she said it, she felt the anger building. How dare Andrew destroy their lives over a stupid joke? How dare he abandon his responsibilities? The cabin had become home faster than Andrew expected. No television, no social media, just books, wood, and silence. He'd started carving again, something he hadn't done since his army days. Simple projects at first: bowls, cutting boards, small sculptures of birds. Darren visited twice a week, bringing groceries and updates from town. The divorce was proceeding smoothly. Valerie had hired a lawyer, but the post-nuptial agreement was ironclad. "She's getting desperate," Darren reported. "Calling around, trying to find someone who'll testify that you were abusive or controlling. Any takers?" "None. Turns out everyone saw what they were doing to you. Your customers especially. They remember the way she talked to you when she came to the shop." Andrew nodded. He'd known people were watching, but he'd never realized they were seeing. His phone rang. A number he hadn't heard from in months. "Uncle Andrew." Lenny's voice brought back memories of her father, Andrew's younger brother, killed by an IED outside Fallujah. She'd been 16 then, angry and lost. Andrew had taken her in, without question, despite Valerie's vocal objections about the extra expense, the disruption to their family routine, the way it would affect Betrayal's college fund. "She's not our responsibility," Valerie had argued the night after the funeral. "David's insurance will provide for her. There are relatives on her mother's side." "Her mother's been dead for 10 years, Andrew had replied quietly. "And David's insurance won't cover emotional support or guidance. She needs family. We have our own daughter to think about." But Andrew had made it his responsibility anyway. Had cleaned out his workshop to create a bedroom for her. Had helped her navigate the complicated grief of losing the only parent she had left. had been the one to sign permission slips and attend parent-teacher conferences when Lenny's grades began to slip. "Lenny, how's law school?" "But good. I heard about the divorce." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Should have happened years ago. Listen, I'm in my second year now. Constitutional law, family law, contract law. If you need help with anything, I've got a lawyer." "I know. Marlo Dritton, right? She's good. But I've been doing research on emotional abuse cases, financial manipulation. There might be more options than you realize." They talked for an hour. Lenny was sharp, focused, nothing like the confused teenager she'd been after her father's death. Andrew had helped her with college applications, had driven her to campus visits when Valerie refused to take time off work, had been there when she graduated summa cum laude while his own wife and daughter found excuses to skip the ceremony. "I want to help," she said. "You saved my life after Dad died. Let me return the favor." "You don't owe me anything, Lenny." "Yes, I do. You could have sent me to foster care or dumped me on distant relatives. Instead, you gave me a home when I needed one most. You believed in me when my grades were terrible and I was angry at the world. You never once made me feel like a burden." After they hung up, Andrew sat on the cabin's small porch and watched the sun set through the trees. For the first time in years, he felt something he'd forgotten: how to feel the satisfaction of having invested in someone who appreciated it. Lenny had turned out exactly like her father, loyal, principled, fighting for what was right. Hope. The next day, he drove to his shop for the first time since leaving. His assistant, Mike, had been keeping things running, but orders were backing up. "Boss, good to see you," Mike said. "We've got 3 custom kitchen projects and 2 built-ins waiting for your approval." Andrew walked through the shop, running his hands over familiar tools. This was what he'd built from nothing: a business with a reputation for quality, craftsmanship that lasted generations. Valerie had never understood why he turned down corporate contracts to focus on individual clients. "Each piece tells a story," he tried to explain once. "Mass production doesn't care about stories." "Stories don't pay for Brielle's college," she'd replied. But they did. His work commanded premium prices because people knew they were getting something special. Hand-cut dovetails, mortise and tenon joints, finishes that would last decades. Blake Reeder showed up that afternoon, another veteran from their old unit. He worked as an accountant now, specialized in small business restructuring. "Darren called me," Blake said. "Thought you might need some financial planning." They spent 3 hours going over Andrew's books. His business was more profitable than he'd realized. The rental properties, a block of small houses he'd bought and renovated over the years, were generating steady income. He'd been using most of that money to shelter homeless veterans, letting them stay rent-free while they got back on their feet. "You're sitting on close to $2 million in assets," Blake said. "The business, the properties, your retirement accounts, plus the trust fund your grandfather left you." Andrew had forgotten about the trust fund. He'd never touched it, viewing it as emergency money. Valerie didn't even know it existed. "What are you thinking?" Blake asked. "I'm thinking it's time to stop being quiet about what I do." Lenny's research turned up more than Andrew had expected. Public records showed Valerie had been claiming single-parent status for benefits while married. Financial documents revealed she'd been hiding income from her private counseling practice. Most damaging was the paper trail of her relationship with Wesley Cordero. They'd been traveling together for 2 years, Lenny explained over dinner at the cabin. Hotel receipts, flight records, all while she was claiming to be supporting herself and Brielle alone. "How did you find all this?" "Public records mostly. Plus I have friends in a law school who know how to dig." Valerie was sloppy because she never thought anyone would look. Marlo Dritton made the formal complaints the next morning. School district fraud, ethics violations, potential insurance fraud. The documentation was thorough and damning. WY noon, Valerie was being escorted out of the school district offices. Wesley Cordero was suspended pending investigation. The local news picked up the story by evening. Local school counselor under investigation for fraud, district employee accused of benefits. Scam Andrew watched the coverage from his cabin, feeling no satisfaction. Just emptiness where his anger used to be. Brielle's college acceptance letter from Oregon State was rescinded on a Tuesday afternoon. The email was formal and brief, citing conduct incompatible with university values. Someone had saved her old social media posts and compiled them into a damning portfolio of cruelty mocking classmates, making fun of teachers, documenting her entitled lifestyle while sneering at people who had less. The video that broke everything showed her and three friends laughing at a girl with cerebral palsy during lunch. Betrayal had filmed it herself 2 years earlier, thought it was hilarious then. Now it had 2 million views and counting. "They can't do this," she screamed at Valerie, waving her laptop like evidence of injustice. "It's not fair. That video is old. I was young and stupid. You were 15, not 5, Valerie said quietly. She was looking at her own phone, reading comment after comment from people in their community. Parents from Betrayal's school, former friends, colleagues from work. The judgment was universal and harsh, but the calls kept coming. Universities withdrawing offers. Scholarship committees asking pointed questions about character and values. Even the community college was hesitant to enroll someone with her online reputation. "Maybe you could write an apology letter," Valerie suggested weakly. "Explain that you've grown. Apologize for what? Having opinions? Being honest about what I think." Valerie stared at her daughter. "Being honest about what you think? Betrayal, you called your father a loser. You made fun of a disabled girl. You've spent years documenting yourself being cruel to people who never did anything to hurt you. So what? Everyone does that. Everyone posts stuff they don't really mean. Not everyone, baby. And the ones who do usually don't get caught." That night, Betrayal locked herself in her room for 3 days, emerging only to use the bathroom and grab food when she thought no one was looking. The house felt like a tomb. No sound from Andrew's workshop. No coffee brewing at dawn. No steady presence holding everything together while they took him for granted on the third night. She recorded an audio message on her phone, her voice breaking with tears. "Dad, please. I'm sorry. I didn't mean any of it. You're the only parent I have now. Mom's lost her job, and everyone hates us, and I don't know what to do. I messed up everything, and I need you. Please just call me back. Please." She sent it at 2:17 a.m. on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, she'd sent 12 more messages, each one more desperate than the last. Promises to change. Apologies for every cruel thing she'd said or done. Memories of when they used to be close, when she was little and thought he was the strongest, smartest man in the world. "Remember when you taught me to ride a bike? You ran beside me for hours until I got it right. Remember when I was scared of thunderstorms and you'd sit with me until they passed? I need that dad back. I need you to forgive me." Andrew's phone sat on his kitchen table, notifications piling up. He read each message, listened to each audio file. Then he deleted them all and went back to his carving. The reporter from the Eugene Register Guard was young and earnest, the kind of journalist who still believed stories could matter. She'd been investigating the Ramsey divorce as a human interest piece when she stumbled onto something bigger. "Mr. Ramsey, can you confirm that you own property at Oak Street, Maple Avenue, and Willow Drive?" Andrew was working in his shop when she called, hand-sanding a cherry dining table that would outlast its owners. "Those are business properties," he said. "Our research shows you're housing military veterans there. Rent-free. Is that accurate?" He stopped sanding. This wasn't part of the divorce proceedings. This was something else. "Some of those guys needed a place to stay," he said carefully. "How many veterans have you helped?" "I don't keep count," but she did. 12 men and 3 women over the past 5 years. All former military, all struggling with homelessness or unemployment. All given free housing while they rebuilt their lives. "Why didn't you publicize this?" Andrew set down his sandpaper. "Because it's not about publicity. It's about taking care of people who took care of us." The story ran the following Sunday with the headline, "Local businessman quietly helps veterans rebuild lives." It included interviews with 7 people Andrew had helped, photos of the renovated houses, financial records showing the scope of his charity work. WY Monday morning, he had calls from the mayor's office, the State Veterans Administration, and 3 nonprofit organizations wanting to partner with him. The governor's office left a message about a potential commendation. Valerie saw the article online and threw her laptop across the room. The courtroom was smaller than Andrew had expected, with wood paneling that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. Judge Patricia Henley presided from behind a wooden bench that bore the scars of decades of gavels and coffee cups. She was in her 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse and sob story ever invented. Andrew sat beside Marlo Dritton, watching as Valerie's lawyer, a young man who looked fresh out of law school, shuffled through papers with increasing desperation. Valerie herself sat 3 seats away, wearing what Andrew recognized as her professional victim expression. The same look she'd perfected for parent-teacher conferences when Betrayal got in trouble. "Your Honor," the lawyer began, his voice lacking confidence, "my client has been married to Mr. Ramsey for 15 years. During that time, she contributed significantly to the household through her employment and domestic duties. She has sacrificed her own career advancement to support her family." Andrew almost laughed. Valerie's sacrifices had included taking every vacation day available, leaving work early for personal appointments, and using her school counselor position to build a private practice on the side income she'd hidden from their joint tax returns. Marlo stood with quiet confidence. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of calm authority that came from winning cases like this won dozens of times before. "Your Honor, we have documentation showing that Mrs. Ramsey signed a postnuptial agreement 5 years ago, voluntarily relinquishing all claims to marital property. This was done following her admitted extramarital affair with a co-worker, Wesley Cordero." The lawyer tried again, his voice rising slightly. "Emotional distress, Your Honor. My client has suffered significant hardship as a result of Mr. Ramsey's abandonment of the family home." Abandonment? Marlo's voice carried just enough skepticism to make the words sound ridiculous. "Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence of the circumstances surrounding my client's departure from what had become a hostile living environment." The screenshots appeared on the courtroom's display screen, enlarged so everyone could read them clearly. Brielle's text message in bold letters: "You're such a loser. Mom should have left you years ago." The timestamps showing the conversation happened during a family photo session, a moment meant to capture happiness and togetherness. Additionally, we have witness testimony regarding years of emotional abuse directed at my client. Darren took the stand first. His testimony was brief and factual. He described watching Andrew become smaller over the years, described Valerie's public humiliation of her husband, described the way Betrayal had learned to treat her father as a source of money rather than a person. Lenny testified next. She spoke about Andrew taking her in after her father's death, about working 3 jobs to pay for her education while Valerie complained about the expense. She described Christmas dinners where Valerie and Betrayal would mock Andrew's military service, his business choices, his appearance. "He never fought back," Lenny said. "He just took it, year after year." The final witness was unexpected. Maria Santos, a parent from Betrayal's former soccer team, had driven down from Portland to testify. "Mr. Ramsey coached our girls for free," she said, "every Saturday for 3 years. My daughter was struggling with confidence, and he spent extra time with her. Never asked for anything in return." She looked directly at Valerie. "His wife never came to a single game. Not one. She said soccer was a waste of time." The judge asked few questions. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showed Andrew's sole ownership of all assets. The postnuptial agreement was legally binding. Testimony established a pattern of emotional abuse. "A fine for the plaintiff," Judge Henley said. "Mr. Ramsey is awarded full ownership of all marital assets. Spousal support is denied. Additionally, I'm granting a restraining order prohibiting Mrs. Ramsey from contacting Mr. Ramsey except through legal counsel." Valerie made a sound like a wounded animal. Her lawyer was already packing his briefcase. Andrew felt nothing. No victory, no satisfaction. Just the quiet relief of a man who'd finally stopped carrying something too heavy. The house looked different when Andrew moved back in. He'd hired contractors to renovate while he was at the cabin. New flooring, fresh paint, updated fixtures. All traces of his previous life had been removed. The workshop in the garage was expanded. The kitchen, where he'd eaten countless silent dinners, was now bright and open. The living room, once dominated by Valerie's decorating choices, was simple and clean. Lenny helped him set up a home office for the charity foundation. They'd formalized his veteran housing program, created a non-profit with proper oversight and funding. The scholarship in his brother's name was endowed with enough money to help 2 students each year. You know, Lenny said, assembling a file cabinet, I never thank you properly. For what? For saving me. After Dad died, I was so angry. I blamed everyone, including you. You could have shipped me off to relatives or put me in foster care. Andrew remembered those first months after his brother's funeral. Lenny had been 17, furious at the world, failing in school. Valerie had made it clear she wasn't welcome. She's not our responsibility, Valerie had said. We have our own daughter to think about. But Andrew had made it his responsibility, had helped with homework, had driven to parent-teacher conferences, had taught her to balance a checkbook and change a tire and stand up for herself. You were family, Andrew said simply. That's what family does. Valerie didn't see it that way. Valerie was wrong about a lot of things. Darren stopped by most evenings. They'd started a weekend workshop program for at-risk teenagers, teaching basic woodworking and life skills. The first group would start in January. 8 kids from the local youth center, all eager to learn something useful with their hands. You're building something here, Darren observed, watching Andrew demonstrate proper chisel technique to a practice board. Something real. I've always built things, Andrew replied. I've just never built them for the right people. The grocery store was crowded for a Tuesday evening, filled with families doing their weekly shopping. Andrew was loading supplies for the weekend workshop: sandpaper, wood glue, safety glasses when he saw her. Valerie stood behind the customer service counter wearing a blue vest with a name tag that read Associate. The vest was too big for her frame, making her look smaller and older than her 44 years. She was helping an elderly woman return a defective toaster, her smile strained and professional in the way of someone who'd learned to swallow pride for minimum wage. Her hair was different, shorter, grayer, lacking the expensive highlights she'd maintained throughout their marriage. The designer clothes had been replaced with store-issued khakis and sensible shoes. She looked like what she'd always claimed to be, but never actually was, a working woman struggling to make ends meet. Their eyes met across the store. For a moment, neither moved. Andrew could see the recognition hit her surprise, then something that might have been shame. She whispered something to her supervisor, a woman half her age who nodded impatiently and walked toward him. Andrew. Her voice was different, smaller. The confident, commanding tone she'd used to dismiss his opinions and mock his choices had been replaced by something tentative and uncertain. He nodded, but didn't speak. Up close, she looked exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. The kind of weariness that came from losing everything you'd built your identity around. She started, then stopped. Her hands twisted together, a nervous habit he'd forgotten she had. Why had she stopped being nervous around him? When had familiarity bred such casual contempt? I didn't know what I had. The words hung in the air between them, a confession and an apology wrapped in 9 simple words. She looked like she expected him to say something, to offer forgiveness or understanding or at least acknowledgement of her regret. Andrew studied her face, looking for traces of the woman he'd married 20 years earlier. She was still there, underneath the exhaustion and humiliation. The same green eyes that had once looked at him with love instead of disappointment. The same hands that had once touched him with tenderness instead of pushing him away. But that woman had chosen to become someone else. Had chosen cruelty over kindness, mockery over support, taking over giving. Had taught their daughter that a father's love was worthless if it came without a bigger paycheck or higher social status. Some things, once broken, couldn't be unbroken. Some trust, once shattered, couldn't be rebuilt. Some words, once spoken, couldn't be taken back. Instead, Andrew picked up his cart and walked past her toward the checkout line. He didn't look back, didn't speak, didn't give any sign that her words had registered or mattered. Just like he had that day on the porch, the automatic doors slid shut behind him as he walked into the parking lot. In his truck, he sat for a moment before starting the engine. Through the store windows, he could see Valerie still standing where he'd left her, watching him drive away. Some things, once broken, don't get fixed. And some men don't forgive they build.